What do you want?
My name is Johann Hoffman. I'm a scientist. I've come to get you out of here. We should leave immediately.
What do you know?
I've watched you through your window. I have witnessed the death from over there. I know how and why they died. You're in great danger. Come with me.
So you tell me why they died.
What difference does it make to you now? Come with me.
Wait a minute, you come in my place and you want me to leave and you don't want to tell me why?
Okay, you have a creature, an alien creature on your roof.
Where?
I study these creatures. You are in great danger. Come with me.
Tell me where he is.
You want to die?
No.
Let me explain.
Let me go.
Let me explain. My theory is that these creatures, aliens, feed of people like we feed of other creatures, that they need for sustenance a substance similar to opiates. Heroin is an opiate. So this one came here for it, and we found something better. That substance is produced in the brain during orgasm and is similar in chemical structure to opiates. It is killing to get this substance.
Well, he didn't kill me, did he? Why didn't he kill me?
Did you have an orgasm?
No.
This is the emergency podcast system. This is not a test. Movies are bombing all over the country. They are posing as movies you already know. They may already be in your theaters, your neighbor's home, or even your own. Do not panic. Specialists have been dispatched. They will help you identify these pretenders and defend you against this invasion of the remake. Please stand by for further instructions.
Welcome to the Invasion of the Remake podcast. I am your host, Jason Bishop, and with me today in the room is Sam Stepanenko.
I'm so not apologizing for this one.
I'm
not.
And
I should, but I'm not going to.
Coming in from planet Vulcan to escape the aliens is Trish Coughlin.
Yeah. I know, Sam, you won't apologize, but again, I'll go to the first comment I sent to you. How fucking dare you?
Hey, I just put it out there. Jay helped make the decision. I'm only taking half the blame.
Yes, this was a request from little Sammy Stepanenko from Calgary, Alberta.
It wasn't a request. I just put a text out there. How have we not done this one yet? And then
And then I go, all right, let's do it.
Yeah. It sounds interesting in the synopsis.
My trust was misplaced.
It sounds like a lot of fun when you read the synopsis. We got sucked in by a synopsis.
Actually, I mean, there's some good stuff in here. There really is.
There is.
Yeah. But
you got to dig.
You got to dig, and you got to suffer.
Oh my God. Okay, the only thing I'll give you, Sam, is you did this. You did this alone.
Yes.
Jay and I did this together. Yeah. You have to do this movie with a buddy if you're going to do it at all.
Oh, yes. I wish we had been recording while we were watching this, me and Trish, because we're hilarious.
We are. We were losing our minds. Like we were like, how much time is left? And we were 10 minutes in.
We were 10 minutes. I was checking the clock. The music in this movie was driving me insane.
It sounded like a 2-year-old got one of those old 80s Casio things and was just hitting keys. Like, it was bad. I'm not denying that at all.
Do you remember when I had that little keyboard when we were roommates?
Yes.
That we had won at the charity casino? Yeah. Having never played a keyboard, I was still better than the music in this movie.
It was brutal, and it was composed by the director. So somebody had either a lot of faith in their abilities or no money and went, okay, I guess I got to do it, and did the best he could. It was still fucking terrible, though.
Two things can be true.
I don't know if that's... Okay, if that's your best, somebody just has to tell you.
Yeah. Somebody should have. Because I'll be honest, when I saw the synopsis for this and the setting for this, I'm thinking, cool, we'll get some fun 80s music, new wave music. No, not at all.
Yeah, especially considering this is supposed to be around the punk scene of the, I think, 80s, maybe 70s.
Yeah.
The fashion certainly screamed early 80s.
It does, and it screams new wave, not punk to me.
Yeah. Trish and I actually watched a couple of YouTube reviews, most of which... I think they just read the wiki. If wiki had been around for Roger Ebert.
Well, we watched it, and because we were watching the review by Roger Ebert, and Siskel was like, "This is terrible." I'm like, "Yeah, Siskel," And then Roger was like, I'll give a thumbs up. And I'm like, oh, God, for look.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like,
It
thumbs
looks
down
really
in the
good.
movie.
Yeah, for look, they both gave it a thumbs down in the end.
Yeah.
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 Well, when you
Visually-
talk about looks, there was a point where I looked over at Jason. I'm like, you know what? Some bits of this looks good. There's good shots. I'm like, oh, God, has the movie gotten inside me?
yeah. No,
Is this a Stockholm Syndrome situation?
yeah, no, it is absolutely a visual experience because, and so much exposition, so much talking that serves no purpose.
Mhm. And this is that more of a surrealist science fiction Liquid Sky. It's a surrealist film that was by the 80s, that avant-garde kind of thing was fading out, but it was a little more prevalent in the 60s and 70s, that kind of slow burn and flat dialogue. But this thing is surreal. Like, okay, we have the UFO from Batteries Not Included.
Actually, it looks like two of those like lights from your ceilings taped together. Is what
Oh, I'm sure it was.
Yeah.
It was just this. Here's this little. The movie opens with the UFO kind of coming towards a building, and at the time, I'm like thinking, "Oh wow, look at this huge UFO coming over New York City."
Yep.
And then later, it's the size of a milk crate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like-
They show it on the top of the building and all the other garbage on top of the building.
so
Crate falls on it.
what if the aliens from Batteries Not Included were addicted to heroin?
That's your
Yeah.
plot.
Yeah, but they get a bigger high from that dopamine kick from an orgasm. Gets weirder.
Yep.
Now let's do that movie and not show you any of that.
Yes.
And tell you a story about abusive peer groups within the modeling community and what they call the
Modeling and punk.
and that punk scene of the 80s, even though it was not punk, it was new wave.
Yes.
Well, actually, we'd watch a little thing. They called it no wave, which
Ah.
I don't know what the fuck that means.
Maybe it's that transition point between punk and new wave. Who knows?
Yeah, the punk
Well-
move of no wave turned into new wave.
Maybe.
Yeah.
We're on to something.
There was a mention of, like in one of the things we were looking at after the movie, where like Jim Jarmusch came out of this sort of
Mm-hmm.
grouping of people trying to do experimental movies.
Oh yeah,
And,
you
like,
can
at
totally
least with
see
a
that.
Jim Jarmusch
Yeah.
movie, you can you have something to grasp onto.
Dead Man's a tough watch for that very reason, because it's it's a lot of what the fuck is going on, but boy, it looks good.
Yeah.
I love the
Yeah.
movie, and I've seen it a couple of times, but don't ask me much about it. I'm not going to answer
Well,
answer those questions
like-
for you.
This is the weird thing, because I mean, we've talked previously about some comic book artists who've gone on to direct movies, and we're quite happy with that because there's a story. Like, their visual medium tells a story. So what you've got here is a bunch of artists who are just using film to make an art piece, like a picture, and then just leaving it at that. And that's you can do like 5-10 minutes of that, and that's it. You cannot do a whole movie.
Almost
It's
2
not nice
hours.
to
and I'll agree and disagree with that statement, because this was essentially a documentary team from Russia who made this movie. So they wanted to have that documentary type of feel by following these characters around and living their lives within this modeling club scene.
But
to a
adding
certain
aliens.
yeah, but to a certain extent, I think they accomplished that, and then it gets really trippy. I mean, holy cow! I would advise you to experiment with some cushion stuff if you're in a state that allows that, or at least a very interesting mixture of alcohols. But none of that is actually
Maybe.
needed, because you will have a high regardless whether you did anything or not before watching this movie. You could you will come out in a very weird state.
Yes.
Because
At the end, you were crying.
I was
And
crying
laughing.
and laughing. It broke me.
I was hysterical and having my hands on my head trying to figure out what to do.
I could only imagine Sam rocking back and forth in his chair, wishing he wasn't alone.
Yeah, there was
Yep.
definitely that. I mean, I'm not alone, but nobody watched this with me. I got 2 what the fucks, as people can also say, what the fuck are you watching? Twice.
And I'm sure your statement was, I don't know.
Speaking of at the same time, we've got 2 how dare yous.
Yes.
At a certain point, both me and Jay reached for our phones at the exact same
It
moment.
was simultaneous. I don't even remember what the scene was, but we were so exasperated by that point. We both grabbed our phones. I'm like, you motherfucker. Nothing was said. We just did it at the same time.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes, I got reprimands simultaneously, remotely. Like I said, I'll take the blame for bringing it up, but I'm not taking all the blame.
I have definitely made you guys watch worse movies. But
No.
No, I will say I've made you watch worse movies. Psychologically affecting in the way we were affected on this one. Hard Rock Zombies, maybe.
Yeah. Well, at least Hard Rock Zombies, I had a freaking story to hang on to. Pretty much
Did you?
from the whole of the movie. I did. They were going to a small town and they were going to do a concert and the townspeople weren't happy. And then they found a book and then they read from it and then they made zombies and then there were Nazis who had lived in the town because you could tell by the old family. There was something there. I had stuff to hold on to.
And a zombie that found himself delicious.
Yeah.
You know, and I love how we describe this. So we got tiny little aliens who are addicted to heroin and orgasms.
Yeah.
And how could we not watch it based on that?
Right? It is our kind of weird.
Yes.
I will give you that. That
This
synopsis did make it seem delicious.
Yes, and this is where our desire for Strange really kicked us in the ass.
Yes.
Hard.
Mhm.
It's a very interesting movie. I mean, I'm glad to have had experienced this thing. Never want to do it again.
Nope.
It was certainly an interesting little independent film. And it was a successful one for this tiny little Russian team that came in. $500,000 they made it for. It went on to do
1.7.
Yeah, 1.7 million. That's not bad. That's not a bad box office for your investment. You know, triple your money. I mean, the biggest independent film of 1983. It was made in 1982 and released in 83. And you got to think about what 82 and 83 were like theatrically and stuff.
Yeah.
Like, good God. Those were insane years for film.
Yeah, and it was at the start of that new wave movement when people wanted to see people like them on screen.
Mm. And, you know, I got to give it kudos with how progressive with LGBTQ characters, that androgynous look. I mean, your main character is pansexual.
Yes.
Yep.
And explains it really well.
Yeah.
There's some beautiful dialogue.
Yeah, we were sitting, me and Trish were sitting on the couch and I go, you know, we got a interesting character. You say bisexual. And I'm like, oh no, they were careful to say, like, she didn't care.
Yeah.
Like, she's totally pansexual.
Even before it was a term.
Yeah, before there was a term.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
She
40 years
was
before there was a term.
pansexual.
Yeah.
Yeah. She was pansexual, but seemed to be constantly victimized by people who she didn't consent to. So she was pansexual, but it never...
Yeah, her peer group was terrible. I mean, she did technically have a girlfriend. It looked like she had a sexual relationship with her mentor as well. Yeah. But she wasn't enjoying any of it.
No.
It was all very abusive and using her for her looks.
Yeah, you could tell there was sort of some intent at commentary with this film about sexuality, about misogyny, about consent. Like, it's all there. It's just, it got lost.
And that's certainly what it is. So, you know, let's throw aliens into that heavy scenario too.
Yeah, I didn't quite get there.
Yeah, like the aliens almost didn't matter in the end. Like, they were a device that didn't really feed the story the way that we expected it to.
Yeah, they were barely a lighting effect.
Yeah. And they were like jumbo shrimp.
Yeah. Trish, do you want this one?
I don't know what they were because, like,
no.
I kept seeing an eye pupil. Like, it looked like what I'd seen at my optometrist.
Yeah, that's what we saw. But Sylvia, the neighbor across the way, kept saying stuff about shrimp and making shrimp.
Oh, shrimp. Yes. I mean, that we had a whole thing where she's like, I made shrimp. And he's like going, oh, and who wants cold shrimp? Like, she was hitting on this guy, and you could tell probably in the back of her mind, she's like, well, I mean, how does he not know I want to fuck him? I offered him shrimp.
Which is weird because she made a point of saying she's Jewish.
Yep.
They don't eat shellfish.
Nope.
Man, do your research.
Yes.
There's some basic research there. You don't want the shrimp if you're Jewish.
There's some irony there, considering he was a German scientist and a Jewish lady was hitting on him. There's like, That was obviously deliberate.
Yeah. But
Well, she makes a point of it.
Yeah.
Like he says, like, I'm German. And she's like, oh, I think I should let you know that I'm Jewish. And that's as she's taking her clothes off. So, like, I don't know if, like, this is a way for her to fuck the Germans. I don't know what's going on here.
we can say that about virtually every scene.
Yeah.
There's a lot of like partial conversations where we can kind of get the gist of that give us background, but we're being inserted into their lives. So we, in a lot of cases, don't have a lot of point of reference. And for a scientist who is exploring that, it was so bizarre because he had a good vantage point from her apartment to see into Margaret's apartment. And there's multiple deaths. Which
the lady is like so... The deaths were fine. But then, what was it? She saw something and that was what upset her?
Oh, it's when she stabbed Johan in the back. That's when she
Yeah, she's like, oh no! But
well, that's the one I want to fuck.
Yeah. Well, because that was actually murder, right?
Yeah.
Like she actually physically killed him versus the alien doing it. So she was okay with aliens murdering human beings, but as soon as...
Nobody was very concerned about it.
Yeah.
To be fair, they were raping her, so, I mean, the aliens, the people did it to themselves.
Yeah. Trish and I were very concerned about the very large box they happened to have in the apartment.
Thank you.
Yes.
It was perfectly human-sized.
Yes! As a bit of background, I just packed up my apartment, and you'd be surprised how hard it is to sometimes find an appropriate sized box. But they just had one lying around for a body.
Well, they are models and fashion people, so maybe they had one for a mannequin kicking around. That's the only thing I could think of.
Yeah.
But it was very convenient.
That was at least plausible. And then they just stick it on the balcony on the roof.
Yeah, because that's where you store your bodies.
Which was funny because it did come back and they did make a joke out of it.
Yeah.
Adrian did make a joke out of it when
he didn't care. Like, well, go look at it. There's a body. She didn't lie.
No.
No.
I mean, she hated the dude and grinded on his face.
After he was dead.
Yeah. This movie's so weird. All right, you know what? I'm going to inflict the trailer on you and we'll be right back.
You wanted to know who and what I am? I'm a killer. You wanted to know where I'm from? I'm from Connecticut. Mayflower Stone. I was taught that my prince would come, and he would be a lawyer, and I would have his children. And on the weekends we would barbecue. And all the other princes and their princesses would come. And they would say, delicious, delicious. Oh, how boring. So come on, who's next? Who wants to teach me? Are you afraid? You're right. Because they're all dead. All my teachers.
Liquid Sky.
That was just a taste. A little taste. A little sliver of a taste. Doesn't even come close to how weird this movie gets. Of Liquid Sky from 1982 with the original screenplay by director Slava Zuckerman and Carlisle, who's also the star of this film, and Nina V. Kurova, who's also got a little bit... Everybody's in this. I mean, it's a small crew, and if you're available, you're going to be in this thing.
Yes.
I mean, the director, he also was the editor, the composer, the lyricist. He did everything. He was Robert Rodriguez, but Russian.
But Russian, and nowhere near as talented.
No. That's a hard no.
This stars Anne Carlisle as Margaret / Jimmy.
Yes.
She actually plays multiple roles in this, and if you look on IMDb, they don't tell you about the Jimmy one, but she is both roles. And very good, I think. I mean, the acting's not good, but I think they did enough between the two characters.
She can do a good Jimmy.
You could easily tell them apart. Her voice isn't as convincing, but I mean, for the most part, her presence and everything else, yeah. You believed it.
Yeah, there were two very different characterizations there, and it was really well done.
Yeah, probably the most difficult stuff to shoot in the film. And for the most part, you don't see them in the same shot until the climax of the film. Yeah.
You said climax.
And Jimmy disappears. Anne Carlisle was also, she's gotten some good roles since then, but you might remember her from Crocodile Dundee. Paula E. Shepherd was Adrian. She was in Alice, Sweet Alice.
That was her only other film role, too.
For most people, if they had multiple parts, it wasn't many.
Yes.
These were all very new actors. They were untested, and for a lot of them, this was their first project or very early in their careers. Susan Dukas.
Some of them were also artists, weren't real actors.
Oh, sure, yeah. Susan Dukas was Sylvia. She was in Blood Rage. Otto von Wernher was Johann, who was also in Perfect Strangers and The Package. The Package is a great movie. Let's not turn that into something terrible.
I'm sorry, but Liquid Sky has morphed my brain, so now The Package sounds funny to me.
Bob Brady was Owen. He was in When Pigs Fly, which is also when I will watch this again. Elaine C. Grove was Catherine. She was in The Riverbed and Love of Life. Stanley Knapp was Paul. Our only connection for this episode back to episode 87.
He was in Mother's Day. I think he was one of the sons.
Yes, he would have been one of the sons.
He was also the best actor in the movie. Like, in terms of actual talent, I felt like he was the best with his delivery.
You know what? I was fairly impressed with Paula Shepherd as well.
Yeah, she was good as well. Yeah, but those two were the most competent actual actors.
Yes, Jack Adelist was Vincent, and you can see him in Hellbound, a Chuck Norris film. Lloyd Ziff was Lester. Harry Lunn was the delivery man. Roy MacArthur was Jack, who was in Lurkers and The Rejuvenatrix.
Bondage zombie film?
Oh, see, I think of vaginal rejuvenation, and it's like it would be a combination of vaginal rejuvenation and like the journey where they turn into somebody's body.
So Fantastic Voyage porno?
I was thinking more like a dominatrix who uses oil of Olay.
Oh.
Sarah Carlisle, who I assume is the sister of Anne, was Nellie. She's also in Perfect Strangers. Nina V. Karova, who we mentioned was one of the writers. It was her only acting and writing credit, but she was also played the designer in this film. Alan Preston was the photographer. There is also like a bit part, the designer's assistant. I do want to mention Deborah Jacobs. She was in Still Waters in 2002 and did 3 episodes of that. And that was about the only thing other in there. When this movie opens, we see a beautiful shot of the Twin Towers. I mean, which these days, in the memory of 9/11, that can be a disturbing image and have a different connotation these days. Yeah. No more so than with Deborah Jacobs, who died during the 9/11 attacks. She was on Flight 93 that crashed in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Eerie.
That is eerie, yes.
Yeah. So let's transition into fun.
Yes. Back to the fun. Ish.
Yes, now that I've transitioned from the very depressing point, let's go back into Liquid Sky here from 1982, which, wow, Sam. Wow.
I'm not defending it any fucking more.
Really interesting visuals in this movie.
Yes.
Neon lights. There's that mask that I kept thinking they kept changing location. I'm like, oh, does this entire movie happen in her apartment? I kept thinking she was in somebody else's apartment, or is she just taking the mask and the lights with her?
Right? That mask comes out. Well, and I thought the mask would come back later, and it sort of disappears at a certain point until you get to the end.
I honestly thought when the alien first lands, we see the funky lights in the apartment when nobody's in it, and it felt like it was scanning the mask, and I thought we'd have a character that had that face.
That's what I was expecting, because, I mean, the eyes in that looked really real, too. I thought it was actually a face at first. Mm-hmm. But it just felt like a another one of those cool visual elements that they wanted to stick in. Because it didn't really serve a purpose. Like, a lot of this movie was about look.
Yeah.
Yes.
Particularly Margaret's look, her face, her hair, the makeup, the clothes. It was all very stylistic.
The fashions and the makeup are very interesting in this movie. They are very different. I mean, very 80s, but at the same time, it's something you don't see in a film, and it's certainly, like, from a fashionista side of things. If you like that sort of thing, yeah, I'd check this movie out. It's really interesting in that regard.
I found that that's what made the watch bearable to me, was the look of it, like just getting sort of caught up in the imagery of the film. Because
when you talk about Margaret, like, I think she should be like an artist. I thought that's what the professor mentor thing, like she was an artist, and like she's presenting her body as part of the art she's making.
And yeah, you can kind of infer that. They never outright say it, I don't think. I'll be honest, there were times where I tuned out and didn't catch all the dialogue because there was so much of it.
Oh yeah, and delivered badly.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that's something we could grab onto for that character. Because I think that regardless of when we set this film, I would like to keep a similar look for the character. Because I think that's part of what makes the character interesting, is that sort of outsiderness of her.
Yeah, if we take away like that documentary style and I start fleshing out these characters, because I didn't know who anybody was. They almost never sent anybody's names. And then, of course, you try to go to IMDb to get some help, and nobody's got a picture. Yeah. So even now, I have no idea who anybody was. Like, there's just a handful of people I know who they actually were in the film, and it took forever. And sometimes it was just extrapolation. It's like, oh, I don't think they mentioned Sylvia's name, but I assume that's the one that was in the apartment with Johann and trying to jump the German scientist.
You would be correct. I actually had to click on the character name to try and figure out who they were. And sometimes the dialogue was enough to tell me, okay, I know who that is now.
Yeah, you went to the extra effort of like looking at quotes and going, "Oh, this person said that. Oh, okay, I know who that is now." I wish I'd thought of that. I've never had to do that kind of dive on a movie before.
Me either, but when my cast was one person, I'm like, I got to do a little bit more.
Yes, yeah, we know who Margaret is.
Yeah, and Adrian, we knew who Adrian was because they're the two that get the most screen time.
Yeah, and honestly, I didn't know Adrian's name for a lot of the time, but I knew...
It took us half the movie.
I knew the actress. I'd seen her before, so I actually was aware of who she was, so that one wasn't as bad. And I still don't know what the professor's name was. They just called him the No.
Oh, the professor's Owen.
Was that Owen?
That's what I thought, too.
Yeah,
I didn't cast him, but I know his name for sure.
But in my cast, I've called him Professor because I was like, I just don't think people will know Owen. I'm like, it's the Professor guy. And that way I can keep it straight in my head.
Yeah. But I kind of like the setting and that unique atmosphere of the models and the culture because, I mean, it is famously for its hedonism and the drugs and the sex and
particularly in New York early 80s. It's the perfect setting, and I'm kind of inclined to keep it there and just fix what needs to be fixed in this film because it allows you to keep that really fun, engaging visual, but wrap a story around it or wrap it around a story instead of making it the story.
I'd certainly like to have like that alien presence of some sort.
And I think with the 80s, it kind of helps us for some of the story points, like to have the foreign guy just come in there and like trying to find like the alien and looking places like that sort of, I don't know, it feels more 80s to me, whereas like, because he wasn't supposed to be there legally apparently, but to have him do that, be there to work illegally, it's just easier in the 80s. I don't know if that's a salient point because again, this movie has harmed me. This movie has harmed me deeply.
I kind of want to have more alien presence, but at the same time, you got to be careful with it because there is something that this movie actually did that was pretty slick. You have all of these sexual interactions that have been forced upon Margaret, and I mean, she's not enjoying it all. And part of the reason, like, she's not being taken by the aliens is she's not getting that dopamine kick from the sex. Yeah. So every time she's getting raped, essentially, the person dies. They get this crystal wedged in their head, at least the first couple of times. And then, I don't know, she sets someone over a window and then they just start taking the bodies out of her apartment with this weird tinfoil crunching effect.
Yes. Very fun, though. I will say, I will give it to this movie for that because I'm like, the comedy of that really helped.
Yeah. But what's going on here is these people are raping her and then they're dying. and she thinks it's her.
Yes.
Like she's doesn't know about aliens and everything else. And of course, she's also in a culture that doesn't trust anything outside of their circle. You shouldn't trust anybody in your circle, to be honest, Margaret.
Right?
Just saying.
That's a really interesting thing. And I'm not sure if you actually show the aliens or have some sort of presence with them within a scene, whether that takes away from it. But I would love somebody to just be hiding in the crowd with the face of that mask.
I was thinking, because it was like kind of a modeling culture, you could have the aliens be models, like kind of show up as models because they're like, oh, this is the prime look for what is beautiful. And also, like, because of the nature of modeling, I mean, nobody's really digging inside to who they are. It would be easier for them to, like, insert themselves in that world.
Yeah, the aliens are the most problematic part of the movie because of the way they were presented in the movie, right? They were just, they never left their saucer. And I know why they made them so small. Because of budget, but
okay.
But also
I was waiting on bated breath because I was like, "Oh my god, you have a reason."
I do have a reason because it's easier to hide in plain sight if you have a small ship, right?
Yeah,
so
for sure.
That made sense to me because they could just drop it on a roof and nobody'd notice it, right? You get a full size flying saucer, somebody's fucking noticing.
Yeah,
right. So I think that was sort of the rationale behind using a smaller alien. You don't get enough of them in this film to sort of build on them. Aside from the fact that they're drug addicts.
Yeah.
But I'm with Jay on this. Like, there has to be some sort of... I want to keep them small. Like, I don't mind having, like, the small alien spaceship. But there should be a projection or some way of them to insert themselves into the world.
I agree. I think that would make them more interesting, where they actually are interacting with the world.
Maybe we should take those aliens from the heavy metal animated film. That doing the drugs and having sex, and they feel like they'd fit right in this movie.
Oh,
with
absolutely.
the smiley face ship.
You know what? Here's what you do: you play the movie Heavy Metal, and then when you get to that segment, you stop the movie Heavy Metal. Then you put this one in between, and then you continue with Heavy Metal at the end to like kind of help you deal with it.
And you just tie it all together. Yeah, in a nice little bow. Yeah, I like the idea of them, interacting with the world. They're not just hiding in their little flying saucer thing and high all the time.
Well, I want to know, like, okay, if they... Because I didn't satisfactorily get the whole heroin thing. It felt like it was told to me. And then they were doing
I want them...
sex
we
thing.
want to find out how they figure out that sex is better than...
Yeah, if you land and have them... zap some heroin addict in an alley somewhere, at least I would have got that.
Yeah, there's a lot of leap there because it all is exposition from Johan. And he does it twice. He actually tells the story twice about how dopamine is their preferred drug.
Yeah. First to his buddy and then to Sylvia.
Yeah, and then again to Margaret at the end of the film before she stabs him in the back. Spoiler.
Literally.
Yeah.
Quite literally.
Quite literally. So you get that explanation multiple times unnecessarily.
Yeah.
Just in case you missed it the first two times. But I think you're right. I think that showing that experimentation would be a lot more interesting, a lot more explanatory, actually.
Yeah. I mean, you know what? You have Paul, who is the heroin addict. I mean, this would be a great moment to, like, tie him in. Where, like, he could be doing heroin, and then, I don't know, maybe some people start fucking, and then they disappear, and he's like, oh my God, what's happening? Like, because that's the whole thing. He's a heroin addict, but he doesn't get taken. So that could be something like he's just the last one they could have had, but they didn't take him.
Yeah, but he does get taken later. But
he does.
Yeah.
With sex.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just the horror fan in me. I'd like to actually see like that physical taking of them and like the aliens snorting, dehydrating them and snorting them or turning them into a chemical that they inject into themselves.
I think that's part of what was missing is that we got the explanation, but we never got to see the end result of it.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, they like to get high. Woo woo.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, and then once all the people abusing her were dead, the thing takes off.
After playing a movie of her.
Yes. And then she wanted to be taken.
Yeah.
She masturbated on the roof or something.
It was, she did heroin. She got, because her Adrian was a heroin dealer, and then she turns all King Kong climbing the building, but in a wedding dress.
Yeah.
and then it zaps her at the very end.
The ship takes off.
Yes.
Like, there's no more drugs left in New York.
There's no more people fucking left in New York. That's the problem.
Speaking of, before I forget, the fact that Sylvia was trying to seduce Johan, knowing full well that the alien killed people when they had an orgasm, seemed really, really flawed to me.
Oh, see, I was going along the lines where she just didn't believe him. She just wanted to fuck him and didn't believe him.
She had witnessed it multiple times, so she knew.
I want to remove because like her attempt at seducing him is like before they're looking through like the telescope, but I want it to be like after she sees somebody die that way, she kind of backs off. That would make more sense, right?
Yes.
Exactly. If this is supposed to be documentary style, nobody acts human in this.
Yeah.
No.
Especially the humans.
Yeah, especially the humans.
And then you got that abuse that happens in the end of the film with Jimmy being really mean to Margaret to the point where the entire crowd forces them to fuck each other.
Right?
And then Jimmy dies and they're going,
while looking at himself
in a
goddamn mirror, a la American Psycho.
Certain about narcissism there. And then the crowd's going, well, that was weird. Let's do that again.
Right?
It's not you. No, there's no way. How about your girlfriend? Like,
see, this is the other thing. Maybe put it on like the 80s because like they're all on drugs. So that would make more sense. Or they're just they're too drugged up. They're not thinking straight.
Well, and that's kind of where I was going with it. I think that's where the film was trying to go with it, is they're so wrapped up in finding the next high that to go at the moment of orgasm actually sounds a little bit appealing to them and fascinating. And if you lean into that a little bit more, that scene could make more sense. Is that, they're so jaded that by their drug use and their partying and the culture they live in, that this is an exciting new development in experimentation for them.
Yeah, you could have the part where the person who's getting taken or the person who, whatever we decide happens to them, like where they like are mainlining the dopamine of this person's head. We could have it, maybe it looks like they're having a really incredible orgasm when they're dying.
Before they just disappear into a couple of tinfoil.
Yeah.
Yeah. Le petit mort.
Yeah. The special effects, given it was 1982 and the budget they had, weren't the worst I've ever seen.
No, actually, I'll give it that.
Yeah. Were they good? No, they most definitely were not. But
yeah, they go into predator vision on an alien you never see. Yeah. It's just, I feel like it's on the monitor. The alien stuff never worked to me because they don't feel like they have a presence other than that tiny little ship. And I didn't understand how any of that worked.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. No, it just...
I would love if that little ship just ran around with a straw.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I think the fact that everything was done remotely, like it never left that spot on the roof, is part of the problem. It's like,
at least the crystals showed that they were doing something.
Yeah. But how are they getting them back?
Yeah. I mean, and the crystals are the size of the ship. So.
How are they getting him back? At one point, Margaret pulls the crystal out of the head and it disappears from her hand.
Yeah, but then it's magic. It's not science.
Yeah. I kept thinking, I'm like, well, you're never going to get into the Fortress of Solitude if you keep losing the crystals.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, I just figured, I mean, the crystal comes, like, it's not shot from anywhere. Like, it's zapped into the person's head. So zapping it back doesn't seem to me to be, like, it's like a Star Trek, the away team's going down type of deal.
I've kind of felt like it was being shot into them, right, rather than transported. And that's, I think, where we can focus on fixing that aspect of it is either have them actively recovering it somehow, or at least explain how they're recovering their drug, right? Because disappearing bodies, you never really see how they're getting their fix.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's all...
Yeah, actually, I think I might have something here. Okay, so we do have that crystal thing. It was a neat idea. And then they do have to retrieve it because it's got that essence of what they need.
Yes.
So back to where I was kind of hoping where they scan that mask at the beginning of the film. Maybe that's the face of the being that's walking among the people that it goes in to collect.
I think that works. That works really well. And that gives that really cool mask more to do in the movie.
Yeah.
Oh, and
Hard to believe we're
disposing of the
trusting-
bodies?
Yeah. The most important thing to us right now is that fucking mask
Yeah.
on the wall.
Giving
Exactly.
a mask something to do.
Yeah, we're giving a mask something to do now.
I was intrigued by the mask as well. We're doing what we need to do. But for the body disappearing, what we could have is like once they've retrieved that little sliver of crystal, that's when the body just sort of crumples away. Like it has to remain intact until they can get everything out. And then it'll crumble away.
And then it injects some sort of disintegration acid thing in there in the body. That worked for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And now we can actually have something why, because Johan does nothing, multiple deaths, barely tries to warn anybody. Does try with Adrian, but Adrian's just like, oh, fuck off, you're a guy.
You're a cop.
You're a cop, because
You're a weird old dude.
Don't talk to me, man. You're the man. We don't talk to the man.
Her way of speaking. I kept thinking like 1940s moms are like, you know what I mean? See? Come on, doll.
Oh, no, I didn't get that at all. I was like, you are beatnik through and through.
Pretentious as hell is what she was.
Yeah.
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 With her
weird headband toque thing.
What the fuck was that?
I don't know.
She had cold ears in New York City.
Apparently.
There weren't a whole lot of scenes where they're not wearing it.
It was really weird. It's like some costumes said, well, this is really alternative. Let's go ahead and do that.
Yeah. But I mean, most of the outfits were weird, so. But that
I
one
love how
stood
there's
out.
so much wild stuff, but we can't let go of the headband.
Because it was the only one that didn't fit the style of the movie. Like, it looked like something that, I don't know, like an earworm.
It's like when they make a phaser out of a remote control or like a blender. It's, you know what it really is, and you can't, or you know it has a proper use, but it doesn't look right where they put it.
And you just can't unsee it. And that's kind of what this was. Yeah, there was an earwormer that they turned around backwards and put across their forehead and made no sense whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we spent a lot of time on that.
We gotta fix this somehow, and sometimes we just need to take a little tour.
Do you think we can get that earwarmer headband into our TeePublic Store?
Oh my god, if we could, that would be amazing. What would we put on it?
Our logo.
Well, no, but our logo, but it should have like a quote. Well, there is a quote, and I like this pussy has teeth.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
In watching this and like lines like that and some of the stuff we saw, you almost feel like even though this movie is really a hard watch and not particularly good, it feels like it inspired a lot. Like when I was reading it, I was already thinking comparisons to I Come in Peace. There are none whatsoever. No. But I was thinking that at least there's some sort of conceptual inspiration from this movie. This pussy has teeth. We've seen a couple movies.
Teeth.
Yeah. There's been a couple.
Literally teeth.
Yeah.
The Man Who Fell to Earth. I saw a lot of that in this.
Yeah, it predated this.
But the styles of Bowie. Were all through this movie.
They even mention it. They even specifically say how he's an inspiration. There's also the whole Predator vision, and again, this is before Predator, and that's probably a stretch. It's not like it wasn't readily available, and other people can't have the same ideas. But you see a lot of potential influence in this film.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it does have sort of the influence where people were thinking, well, if an alien came to our planet, would they see like we see? They might not see like we see. And so that's what they did with it. But for the Predator, like the Predator vision, what I was going to mention too, that I kind of actually liked was where they show like at the moment of orgasm, it's just like they show this big dot and the head exploding. And I'm like, okay, I get that. Like that's how they visually think that's what the sensation is and how that goes and all the dopamine coming out.
Yeah, no, you can definitely tell what they were doing there for sure. That rush of dopamine and endorphins that you get at the moment of climax.
Yeah, and I like the idea of like whatever they're using to see, being able to see that physically within their own spectrum. That would be easily achieved with modern effects.
Very easily achieved. I mean, we can do that particular style or that particular look better now, right? Just modernize it and make it a little less cheesy.
Yeah, because they didn't have much other than just they were playing around with lighting.
Yeah,
more than anything else.
Yeah, and largely well. Like we said, I mean, the look of this film, you can't really fault the look. It's just everything else.
Yeah, and I couldn't help but think of comparisons to Joe Bagos's Bliss.
Yeah,
who I would totally have as my director for this, but he kind of made his own version of this already, which was that drug art culture in his film and these kind of vampires, but there was also massive drug addiction in the film as well. And a lot of those themes that are in this film are actually in that movie.
Yeah, again, we're talking about how you can see it might have inspired other things. Because for all its flaws, there are some really interesting things about it.
Yeah. I mean, instead of aliens, he kind of threw in vampires. Which is not a really big stretch. It makes more sense. Boy, now that I think about it, yeah, he totally ripped off this movie.
Oops, there already is a remake.
But you did really well.
Yeah.
Yeah. He fixed a lot of problems, I'm assuming. I haven't seen it yet. I want to be in the right mind space to do it.
Maybe this is the time, because now that you've seen Liquid Sky, maybe the time to watch it and see this is what it should have been.
I think so.
But
yeah. Now that the irreparable harm is done.
Irreparable harm.
I was telling Jason, like, yesterday, I'm like, I'll be perfectly fine. And then all of a sudden I'll get a flash of, like, she's dancing for Jimmy. And I'm like, ah.
I mean, how could anybody dance to that music?
Oh, it's easy because they couldn't afford the rights to anything.
Yes.
They couldn't get any music clearances that people would dance to, so it was the only thing you could.
And the funny thing is you'd think like late 70s, early 80s, like 1982. I mean, the punk scene was still around. They could have easily gotten punk bands to just sell their music for $200 even.
Mm-hmm. I mean, most of them have been like, "Oh, you wanted a movie? Yes, sure."
Yeah.
They didn't try hard enough.
No, just ask.
Yeah. And they were in New York.
Yeah, like that's the scene there that would have been there. Oh my God.
The music even leans more into the whole new wave, no wave scene that we've now been given the term for, where it's sort of this noise music. So, I mean, again, in New York, for sure, you would have had bands that were experimenting with music and stuff like that, and you could have had somebody who was doing it well and better.
Yeah, exactly.
So you're dead now, shit, and you're going to hell. Straight from your marijuana jungles. Straight from your lies, your lies, your lies. You drop dead fucking. It suits you well. You go to hell. We'll go to hell. I'll go to hell too, but I know I'm damned, and you never knew. So you weren't ready to toll the bell. For me, it's easy. From hell to hell, I'm not dancing in marijuana jungles. I live in concrete mazes, stone and glass. Hard like my heart, sharp and clean. With no romantic illusions to changing the world. I don't lie to myself that love can cure, because I know I'm alone. And you fought that every day you lived. You lied. Lied, you lied. You go to hell. Suits you well. Shit.
All right, well, I think it's time for us to concentrate more on remake ideas here. So, what else we got here? we do have, okay, we've got a little more, we've actually figured out something to do with the mask.
With the mask.
Yes.
We've kind of figured out the aliens as well.
Yeah.
Given them more present, as you mentioned it, they have more impact on the film this way.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the relationship between Margaret and her peers is the other issue that needs to be addressed.
Yeah.
That relationship between Margaret and Jimmy makes sense because they're rivals, but at the same time, the fact she's comfortable with bringing him back to her apartment for a sexual rendezvous.
Yeah.
Well, they were getting ready for some sort of shoot in her apartment.
Yes.
For the latter half of the movie, yes, but at the beginning when they first go, he's looking.
She tries to. Jimmy tries to pick her up.
Yeah, to go try and get drugs
and then
from
knocks
Adrian.
over her shoe rack.
Yeah,
where she had her shoes hanging.
Yeah, because Adrian's his drug dealer.
Yeah,
right. And I think we need to work on that more. Is that Adrian's club, or is she just a performer there and is being a drug dealer her real job? Like, we don't know this. That's all very unclear.
I think she's a drug dealer, but wants to be an artist.
No, I think she does own the club. She does run drugs out of it. She's very much into that scene because they party there. They've used it for shoots there. So it's kind of her community. And she picked up that star that was Margaret. That's her project. and the last one was Jimmy.
I like that.
Oh, there we go. Yes.
I like that. And that explains the sort of antagonism between her and Jimmy when he's trying to buy drugs off her.
And why they look alike and why Adrian.
Yeah. Well, it would also kind of have the whole thing of like why Margaret might put up with a bit more from Adrian because she knows that she helped Jimmy get all big. So
I like that. I think that works a lot better. I like the idea of Margaret being part of the drug scene, but not a drug user as well. I think if we bring that back to the end, when she does, if we keep her doing that with the heroin, doing heroin at the end of the movie, I think that really shows what's happened to her really well. Right?
Yeah, I mean, we're slowly seeing this breakdown of this woman who's not using any vices to try to counteract this, or at least not ones that the aliens are interested in.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, she wanted coke like at the very beginning of the movie. She literally only does it recreationally. Everybody has a problem, but she honestly weirdly doesn't. Maybe that could be also why the aliens don't want her, because they're like, oh, we're not going to get fed off her enough.
Yeah, alternatively, we could make her almost asexual in the sense that when she does experience intimacy, she doesn't get anything from it.
I think maybe because of the culture she's in, she just sees it as a stepping stone, something she has to do to get from point A to point B, which is why
it's a commodity rather than
which is why she's never experienced it as a pleasure and just in some cases I think that's probably true with this movie. It just didn't come across. Yeah. Now it does seem like she does have an infatuation with her mentor, but a flirtatious one that she doesn't want to become sexual, and she just kind of gives in to it, or maybe she baited him into it.
She wants him to take her
know.
seriously. Like she was like, I thought you said I was going to be a great artist, and all he did was he just wanted to use her.
Well, and
that's so disheartening for her.
They did outright say that they had had a sexual relationship at one point. Yeah. And I think maybe there was, and he wanted to continue it, but she's like moving on. She's moving on to her career as an artist. And I like the idea, like you said, Jay, I think it was you, or Trish, one of you said that she's an artist rather than a model or a performer. She is an artist. Like everything she does is part of her art. And I think
she lives her art.
She lives her art, exactly.
Yeah.
So I think that he respects that art, but he's also disappointed that she's moved on beyond him.
Yes.
Right. That's how it leads to that moment where she says, well, one last time is not going to hurt anything. Right?
Yeah. Little does he know.
Yeah. And you even have her say, this is the last time. I need to move on. You're older. I need to be people with my own age, my peers. And you've been very supportive, but blah, blah, blah. I really don't need this anymore.
Yeah.
I've learned everything I need to learn from you. I'm moving on.
And that could really be that moment where you understand that she uses her body as a commodity, where she says, you know what, I gave myself to you because I needed you. I don't need you anymore, so you don't get me anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the skeevy guy picks her up in a bar and then rapes her.
I think that's important. As uncomfortable as it is, I think that's important.
Yeah. I like that she goes looking for him later.
Yeah.
Once she thinks
knows.
She's got some sort of weird power.
She gets vengeance.
But that makes the most sense. I think that, that
and that's why
needs
it's
to happen.
important, is that does need to happen.
This is a weird movie because I'm like, even though it's like this bizarre, surreal science fiction movie, it's a rape revenge movie too.
There's so much commentary in it. We talked about the whole pansexual speech and the misogyny and the drug culture, and there's a lot of things happening here. This is almost a proto-feminist film in some ways.
Mm-hmm.
Well, sort of, up until a point where it's sort of kind of at the end, she's like, take me with you. Like, she's so used to being used, is she thinks love is being consumed.
Yes, and it does undo itself at the end. Like, and I said, that's why it's kind of, but that last scene does undo a lot of what it was doing. And I think we could fix that. I think that the semi-tragic ending is still important. I think that's one of the things I did like about it, is it was this sort of almost unresolved ending, and it wasn't a happy ending. It's conveyed what that scene was like. There's not a lot of happiness in this community, and her ending is not happy.
Yeah, I mean, she was mentally broken by the ends and convinced this was some sort of weird messiah when she learns of their existence. Yeah. But she thought it was her up until that point, so her mind was breaking, and in a way it was a sacrifice, a suicide.
And I would say that it's also too where, at least in our remake, the whole point is like, yeah, well, I've lived my life like as my art and everything. Like, this makes sense. This is the ultimate statement.
Well, I mean, it keeps killing her abusers, so she thinks it loves her.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Which there's no feelings involved at all. They're also drug addicts.
Yes, they are also drug
Exactly.
addicts. And that's
It's
the irony
one
of
more
that.
thing
Yeah.
using her.
Yes. Yeah, and I think that the reason she has that sense is because after Owen, the professor, dies and his body's out there, and she says, "You keep leaving me bodies." Right? So she knows there's something out there.
Mhm.
Right? And she says, "You can't keep leaving me these bodies around. I can't
get
have
rid of them.
I can't get rid of them."
Mhm.
And then that's when it changes and starts getting rid of the bodies for her.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
The one favor it did.
Yeah, the one favorite.
Because she's a good commodity for the
Yeah.
resources they need.
Yeah, she's a cow.
Yeah.
Quite literally, she is the cow that
Yeah.
brings the milk.
Yeah.
Do you think rather than like, yeah, the tragic ending is she does actually kind of figure it out and she's like, yeah, no, I'm done using my body to get things from people. She goes out on her own.
See, the problem with
Kind of
that is
the end.
how do you come back from that experience? Right?
Mhm.
I mean, she's also committed murder at this point.
Yeah. The murdering Johan did not make sense.
No.
Well, it did and it didn't, because he was trying to take away from her the thing that she thought made her special.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Again, not
I
well
want it
handled.
to happen, but I want it to be an accident where she isn't listening to him and just he might fall off the roof or something. I want it to be an accident because it sort of helps with her character. That can make sure that she can really break free at the end rather than just sacrificing herself.
Well, I mean, Johan's kind of a broken character too, where
Yeah, we
they're
have to
just,
fix him,
you know,
so, yeah.
rear windowing him the whole time. Well, so we'll get to that. But, you know, what if she becomes aware of what's going on? Like, if she becomes aware of the aliens earlier and is willingly being this cow for them, and it gets rid of her issues too. It deals with that mental break as well as the fact that she's just finding reliance somewhere else.
Yeah.
Rather than her peer group anymore.
I think
I wonder
that works
if there's
better.
another one she could do that could get her somewhere. She could use it, and then that would be like the final one where she would get something out of it, and then that would be the end of the relationship.
Well,
you know what I mean?
To use this as a way to manipulate herself up a ladder that I'm unaware of what that might be yet.
Yeah, I don't know. I was just...
I'm
spitballing here.
And then throwing away the aliens too, because she doesn't need them for anything either.
Exactly.
I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
It gives her a little bit more power in there, but at the same time, she embraced it in such a way where she needs her comeuppance, I guess.
To a certain extent, yeah, because she's
But,
willing.
I mean, she's been a victim the whole movie too.
She's a
So
victim, but
maybe
she's also a willing
taking-
participant.
Yeah, but taking that power back a little bit might be
Contradictory in some ways, but I think I see where you were going. So she becomes aware of the aliens, but not what they're doing. Right?
Mhm.
And then that's where Johan becomes more interesting because or more important, because when he explains to her, well, they're drug addicts. They're using you to collect dopamine from your partners. That's why they're dying.
Mhm.
Right?
Yeah.
It's not helping you get vengeance on these people who've been victimizing you. It's using you as much as they did, where he gets to have that moment with her and she gets that moment of clarity that, oh, look, I have been a victim. These aliens are using me just as much as everybody else has.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Johan and her have to meet more than once where she just kills him. Like, he has to try and talk to her. Like, I would probably replace the Adrian scene with him trying to talk to Margaret.
That makes more sense.
Well, and you can still have, actually, it should be the both of them in the same scenes. So you got Adrian and Margaret. So you still have Adrian acting the way she does, just no trust whatsoever, but something's getting through to Margaret.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's that moment where it's like, well, he tried to warn me moment at the very least, where she has that memory of that discussion.
Yeah, early enough that where she hasn't figured things out yet, and things are getting a little weird. But once the first couple of people die, she's like, "Oh, right, that dude."
Yeah.
And
Yes.
she could seek him out rather than have him sitting across the way getting hit on by somebody for.
Well, that fixes
for days.
That fixes my issue with
Yes.
his moral compass too. It's like, yeah, we'll let these people die,
Mhm.
right, for the sake of my studies.
Yeah, but I mean, like, that's not uncommon for, like, a scientist in a movie to be like, you know, because that would also be, like, the theme where, like, the people dying to him are a commodity.
Yeah,
They're just cattle to be sacrificed.
well, you could even have him justifying it by saying, well, they're drug addicts and the dregs of society anyhow, so who's going to miss one of them?
Yeah.
Right.
And he could be like a black hat type of scientist. Like, government's very aware, and they are watching this experiment play out
And letting it happen.
letting it happen and doing nothing.
Because these are inconsequential people that are being affected.
Yeah. When they think it's just killing a drug addicts, well, let's watch and see what transpires here. All you're doing is clean up the city, so they don't care.
Yep.
I mean, which is a government thing we could all probably relate to in some way, shape, or form.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it puts a little darker spin on Johan, but I mean,
I'm
just
okay
because
with
he's
that.
Then his demise isn't as bad.
yeah,
Really?
and maybe it's because of his observations, and maybe it's his partner who's more the stiff chin. He's the scientist who's been brought in to observe, who actually has a moral fiber rather than the people.
Yeah.
He
Which
works
is why
for.
he tries to warn Margaret.
Right.
And then he gets in trouble for it later.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's where Sylvia could come in. She could be his handler instead of this sort
Oh,
of
that makes more sense.
overtly sexual woman who's trying to seduce him.
That's obsessed with shrimp.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yes. The whole shrimp thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I get it. Shrimp are fine. They're lovely. I like it. I enjoy eating them.
Yeah.
But
Well, the whole thing came up because he said they were about the size of a jumbo shrimp. That's where the whole obsession came with, and it just they ran with it a little
Boy,
bit
do
much.
they! Like, what's not in that scene? Shrimp.
Cocktail sauce. There's lots of shrimp. There's just no cocktail sauce.
It's like this whole movie. They tell you about aliens. You know what you don't see? Aliens.
Mm-hmm. But we
still won't.
In
we still won't
For the
see
most part,
aliens.
no. For the most part, no.
We get a
might-
representation at least.
Yeah. And a bizarre one. Like, I like the idea of this,
Mhm.
this
It being kind of faceless.
emotionless mask
Yeah.
of an automaton person of some sort.
Yeah, and that's where we could get that moment that Margaret realizes that they're something else. Not necessarily aliens, but something else. Because she sees the mask from her apartment walking around in the club.
Yeah.
And she's like, wait a minute.
There you go.
And then she has that moment and she tries to have a conversation with it.
Yes. I like it. And it has a bit of a Messiah-esque thing to it.
It does, yeah.
Yeah.
And I like the idea of it being androgynous as well, kind of like she is. So there's that dichotomy between the Margaret Jimmy characters and the alien. It is extremely asexual.
Yeah.
With the mask, like, I just have a visual of, I'm trying to remember the Japanese animated filmmaker, like from Spirited Away, where there's like the mask with like the robe.
Yeah. The Miyazaki.
Miyazaki, and it's like a live action version of that.
In some ways.
It would fit in.
I like the idea of it being very much a part of the scene. Like, it looks like it, because it's taken everything it knows from Margaret's apartment.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like, it's going to be running around, but, it's going to be in the background, and you want the audience to think that this thing is just part of the culture, right?
Yeah.
Which is why a lot of people probably aren't going to bat an eye at it.
Mm-hmm.
Hiding in plain sight.
Exactly. I mean, you have Margaret walking around with her walking art, and you have other people walking around who are just as unique looking.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So this is not out of place in this club.
Yeah.
And it's because of the environment that Adrian has cultured.
Yeah, and there's a lot of that asexual look within the club. I mean, she even says, like, well, everybody's gay at the club. Nobody's trying to pick up the
But not all the
sex. Yeah, but not all the time, obviously, because she's getting picked up.
Yeah. But what she actually says is, everybody at the club's gay, but not all the time.
Yeah. Depends on the day.
Yeah.
It was a neat line.
Yeah, and
it says quite a bit, actually.
There's some dialogue that I would like to rip out whole cloth. Like, that's part of it. And then her scene about being open to anybody.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about their sexuality or their gender. It's about who they are.
Yeah.
And then Paul has that the only time that Paul seemed to serve any purpose aside from being a victim was when he's sitting at his dining room table with his wife or girlfriend or whatever she was, and explaining about how human beings always seek out euphoria. I thought that whole monologue was great.
Mm-hmm.
Like, some of the dialogue is really well written.
Yeah, it took me forever to figure out how Paul fit into things with his wife there. And I knew he was an addict, and just the way they were setting that up. But I was like, when is this going to come together?
Yeah. And
it took a while.
Really, but kind of does, because he's just a victim.
Yeah. And just another person who's getting his drugs from Adrian, really.
Yes.
But the way they shoot all these scenes, and you're just wondering, like, you're watching random stuff and it flips back and forth without any context. It takes a long time in this movie for you to start piecing it together.
Yes, and to their
sometime
credit,
after you finished, and you're like, oh, okay, I see how that all fits now.
Yeah, and to their credit, they did do that. It just took a long time, and it was really hard to watch to get there.
Yes.
Yes.
And because you never had a chance to invest anything in any of the characters.
No.
Even Margaret, you didn't really get a chance to invest in her because she was so remote. Like, everything about her, even though she was like your lead character and she was part of she was the story. There's
disconnected.
a distance, she's disconnected. And all the way through the movie, like, she never did feel really connected. And I think that's...
Well, when she first showed up and was out in the first lines, I'm like, oh, there's our alien.
Yeah.
And then when goes to the apartment, I'm like, and trying to find drugs and things oh no, she's a person. Was I supposed to think that? Like,
yeah, because like what I thought would happen is, remember we were having it where there's like he keeps shoving Quaaludes down her throat.
Yeah.
And I thought, okay, now she's going to turn alien and kick his ass.
Yeah.
And that does not happen.
Yeah. I was thinking like a species thing, and it doesn't happen. I'm like, oh. The whole time I'm like, nope, this movie's just not giving me what I keep thinking it's supposed to be.
Yeah. And I kind of enjoyed that about it, that aspect of it. Even though the movie itself was, again, challenging to get through, there were things that were really well done, and it did subvert expectations a lot, which is what made it, one of the things that made it bearable to get through watching it by myself.
It was just me and Trish entertaining each other for the most part.
Exactly. We were trying to figure out what the hell, and then like we were like what was that? And then taking timestamps and be like, eh.
Yeah. There's literally one character during that group kind of forcing people to have sex and go away, but when Jimmy's being really aggressive with Margaret and they're just kind of egging it on, and there's one dude that sits down next to Adrian and goes, "What's going on?" And we both go, "Yes, what is going on?"
What is going on? What's going on? Why are they all being so mean?
Being mean here and in the club is no fucking difference than all those fuckers out on the street. Or anybody else in the goddamn world. Only difference is out there they all pretend to be nice. And in here we ain't pretending shit.
That is the log line of this entire movie and experience.
Yeah, and that scene was really awful. Like, they call her like chicken, and he's calling her ugly, and I mean he's verbally abusing her quite extensively.
Yeah.
And I mean, and I know why they did it, because they wanted her to reach the point where she's like, well, here, I'm going to pleasure him, and then he's going to die.
Yeah.
And the transition from that, I mean, I think it's having him verbally abuse her to make her angry. I get that and would keep that, but the whole crew doing it as well, I think that they should be uncomfortable with that aspect of it, right? It's like, they're going, what the fuck is Jimmy doing? Right? Who does this guy think he is? Does he really think he's the one that people want to see? When all the photographs they taken up to then were of her?
Yeah.
Exactly. And then there should be like a point too where Jimmy, I mean, he does say like, I can't do that. Like, you would have the whole thing of like why he's so abusive is he can't fuck. Like, he's
they even talk about that, how he can't get it up because he's so strung out on heroin that he can't get it up anymore.
Exactly.
Right?
But I mean, it was pretty smart when they threw up the mirror, knowing he wasn't going to get off without looking at himself.
Yeah, and that his vanity is the only stimulus that he has.
Yeah.
And I think that was great. Like I said, there's so much smart stuff in this movie.
Yeah,
and you can tell the filmmakers were smart.
Yeah,
it's just their intelligence was greater than their talent.
Yeah, and you know, I got to give him a little bit of credit. There's a lot of sexual stuff in this movie, but no nudity.
None.
So
there's a little bit at one point, but it's just from behind.
Yeah.
Oh, you're right. Yeah.
A bare back. Oh no.
Oh yeah.
I know. Which I think she had like glitter lotion on. She seems very shiny.
Just adding to the alien. I still think she was an alien.
Yeah, that was the expectation because she does look otherworldly. Is the whole other part of it.
That might be our twist at the end. Is she always has been an alien? She's an alien cop looking for them.
That puts a whole mainstream spin on it.
Why not?
Yeah. Oh, well, maybe
finally goes, you're finally busted, assholes.
Or you could have her like she is part alien. She's just not those aliens.
Nah.
I think her just being a really damaged, disconnected human being works better.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't say, like, you know, maybe she was genetically modified to be the cow you said she was. And that was always her function. She was
and that could be
damned
where
to
the
this
scientists,
existence.
that's where they knew about it. The scientists are like studying
They've
the
been
free
watching her
range.
since she was born.
Yeah, they're watching the free range whole thing, how it works out.
Yeah, or I mean, even if she wasn't like bred to be one, they've modified her. She's an abductee.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's more where I was leaning towards.
Yeah,
but
she's an abductee, and they've damaged her hypothalamus somehow, so it's where she's no longer able to experience any pleasure.
Yeah.
Right, and that's why she uses the drugs, because they're just like she gets a little bit sense of feeling.
Yeah.
So then she does use drugs. Maybe, like as I said, she's a straight edge, but maybe not. Maybe she's a heavy drug user, but she never seems to get an effect out of it.
Yeah.
Oh, that could be it too, because like she does say, I've had more Quaaludes and it's fine, and that could be part of it too.
They just don't affect her, and that she's always trying to find the next high or find a way to feel anything.
A little bit high.
Yeah. Ooh, I like that idea a lot better.
Yeah.
Interesting.
What's funny is you could have it too, where it's like, everybody around her is all into these drugs, and she's, why are you guys obsessed with this? It doesn't do that much.
Yeah, and how, from your perspective, how would you know what it is supposed to do? Other than seeing how it does affect people. Like, well, that's weird. It doesn't hit me like that.
Yeah.
Exactly. She just keeps thinking these people are lightweights.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that could be another thing that Jimmy doesn't like about her, is the fact that the drugs never seem to grab hold of her like they do him.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
Like, he knows he's an addict, and he hates that he's an addict, but he's an addict. He can't...
And he knows it's wrecking his career.
Yeah, because we don't get a lot of Jimmy scenes, but when we do, they're fairly significant. He is having dinner with his parents, and the whole time he's just asking for cash so he can get more drugs, even though you would think he's a successful model, but he's been blowing it on heroin and everything else.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And his career's on the decline because people are noticing that he's strung out. He looks strung out all the time.
Well, when he first sits down at the whole shoot at Margaret and Adrian's apartment, he's like, where are the drugs? Where are the drugs? Where are the drugs?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he doesn't really say anything else beyond that.
I think we got something.
I think we do.
Yeah. I mean, we don't have to do a lot. We just have to tighten it up. And I mean, it's long. It's like an hour and 50 minutes.
I mean, you could use that time a little better by telling us who people are and what they are to her and what those relationships are. And that's, I mean, if you're going to put a lot of focus on that, we should understand it better. Instead of the constant, but like part of the problem is the way this movie is put together and edited. It's just, you're jumping around without a whole lot of context on anything.
Exactly. Even if you just do simple scenes like you show Paul buying drugs from Adrian early on in the film.
You see a connection.
Yeah. You see the connection, and then when he has a discussion with his wife at home, at least you know that he is tied to the community somehow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He doesn't look like part of the community in any way, so he made no sense until he did. But when they finally brought him into the community for his moment where he's the homophobic asshole on top of everything else.
Yeah.
So what do you think? Is that better, Professor?
I think you look like a hooker. And you act like a hooker. And you're going to wind up in the hospital with some horrible sexual disease.
You don't understand. So I look like a hooker. So what? You like it. I know that you like it. So why should I live these lies? The way you want me to dress and behave is as a sweet housewife, slave of her husband's will. A hooker's at least independent. I'm nobody's victim. It's only fair that I warn them this pussy has teeth.
All right, well, let's get into some casting here. Sam, what do you got?
Okay, so I did want to keep the characters of Margaret and Jimmy as the androgynous, gender-swapped characters. I cast Kirsten Stewart. I think that she'd be great in that role.
I considered her, actually.
Yeah. I think she does androgyny really well. I think it's kind of her thing, actually. So I think that she'd be great in that role. For my Adrian, I was Zoe Kravitz. I wanted somebody who's just a little bit older and a little bit harder, because especially if we're making her a club owner and a sort of a central figure in the community, I wanted her to be a little bit more mature. For my Johan, I would Daniel Bruhl. He's a little bit younger, but I think that he'd be a great scientist, especially if we're going to give him that character with a conscience.
Okay.
Okay, can I just say I also did that?
Oh, good.
Excellent. So for my Sylvia, I did cast Sylvia, and now that she's sort of the hard-ass partner, I think this casting actually works even better. I've cast Alyssa Milano.
Nice.
For my Paul, I cast Kieran Culkin. I was thinking of like sort of the party monster character that his brother played way back in the day. I think that he's of the right age to be playing that.
Played.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. But yeah, I think he'd be good in that Paul role. And that was my cast. I think those were sort of the central characters. They either had dialogue that was important or they had roles in Margaret's life that were important.
Mm-hmm.
I selected Josh Trank as my director. I think that he does sci-fi well. I don't think Fantastic Four was really his fault necessarily. He has to take some accountability for it, but
certainly there's a lot
it's not wholly his fault.
Yeah, we know there was a lot of corporate influence on that movie that really changed it.
Yep, and that was it. That was my entire casting, directing.
Okay, Trish.
Yeah, I was with Sam on this. The small ones I did cast because I just had to know what they were. Because again, you're just trying to figure out. So for Margaret / Jimmy, I also just cast one actor because I like that idea.
I think we all did that.
Yeah, I went with Honor Swinton Byrne, who is Tilda Swinton's daughter.
Oh.
I love Tilda Swinton. Tilda Swinton has basically already done this role in Orlando. So, I mean, she's done it. But
I actually have her just on my list of like, fill out this movie. I don't know what role I would give her, but I mean, I feel like she should be in this. You know?
Somehow, I don't know how you'd fit her in though.
I mean, you might have to create a new character for her or something.
Well,
or you have an epilogue with her as Margaret at the end.
Oh, as an old Margaret.
Yeah.
That's an interesting
or
angle.
you have her take off the mask. I don't know.
Oh yeah, she could be the face behind the mask too.
Could be.
Yeah.
As that whole community implodes, it has to move on, so.
It really does.
Yeah. Maybe. That might be something. I continue. Sorry, go ahead.
Okay, and then Adrian, I had Jenna Malone because she can do acerbic and caustic and using, and yeah, she's got it in her. I think she could really kind of take this role and really run with it.
Yeah, she could.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a big fan of her in that type of role. I mean, and she's probably a really sweet woman, but she always plays that sort of hard ass, nasty character for some reason.
She knows how to do it. The whole point when she is doing it, I never really truly hate her. I just love watching her do it. You know what I mean?
Yes, I do.
I did cast the Professor Owen, and for some reason, I just went with Elijah Wood because I thought that would just be an odd out of left field type of deal to have that. Sylvia, I went with Andy McDowell because I was going for his same look. Paul was Bradley Cooper. Yeah, he can do a drug addict. I've seen Limitless. And then Johan, again, Daniel Bruhl. And for my director, I went way out of left field. This is so bizarre. I don't know who could do something like this. And then I remembered our episode of Meet the Feebles. And then I thought, oh, Peter Jackson can do some real fucked up stuff. And so I went with him. As long as we can get him in an editing room and make him edit it and make it short.
Yeah, his movie's already long. His would be longer.
Yeah, it would be 4,000 years long.
He can release his director's cut later. We're going to have a theatrical release and we're going to make it cut down.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, it already exists, but I'd probably use Joe Bagos because, he knows how to hit those points. For my cast, for my Jimmy / Margaret, I went with a model named Saskia de Brau. And she was in Once Upon a Time, which was out in 2013, and in David Bowie's music video, The Stars.
Okay.
Ooh.
Considering that connection that this movie already has to Bowie, I thought that's a fun thing.
Oh, yes, bring it right back.
Yeah,
exactly.
She's definitely got that androgynous look that we are all talking about for this character. So when I was watching this movie, Adrian constantly, her eyes, her facial structure, I'm like, oh, I gotta put Summer Glau in that role. She looks the same.
You made that mention when we were watching it. I'm like, yep, that's what's happening.
Yeah.
So
I'm not going to fight it.
No, don't fight it. And
I didn't do it on purpose because I knew that's what was happening.
And again, she's older, and that makes sense to have her sort of as a matriarch of the community, right?
Yeah.
And that's why she doesn't look like the rest of them too, like because she did dress like all in black. And
but she still kind of got that figure, that you could see maybe she was part of that community in an earlier version of.
Exactly,
which is where she's built this new community around her, because she was important in that community and had been in that place.
Yes. And wanted to continue supporting it, which is why she opened the club. And
For the Johan character, we'll probably have to rename him, but I went with Sacha Dhawan from Doctor Who, plays the Master currently, and he was in Iron Fist as well.
Okay.
For the Professor, and I did put a few like kind of that androgynous or at least LGBTQ actors in here. For the Professor, I had Eddie Izzard.
Oh, he'd be perfect.
Nice.
Yeah. I came across it. I'm like, oh,
I'm
man.
jealous of that.
That's really good.
I didn't cast the Professor in that.
I didn't think he was that important, and then it came into my brain. I'm like, I like that.
Yeah.
I like that a lot.
He'd lean right into it too. He'd love doing that.
Yeah. For Paul, I assumed like he might be part of the community a little bit more than he actually was in this movie, but I went with Jared Leto.
Oh, he'd be a good Paul.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's done Heroin Addict before, so
he does.
Requiem for a Dream.
Yeah. And it's
Another hard watch.
to fill out this crowd, and I don't know who, because I didn't know who anybody was anyway, so a few more actors I kind of came up with. There were two models that still fit that kind of androgynous look that I could have put in that lead role as well. Erica Linder and Kristen Mcmenami, both models known for their androgynous look. And of course, Tilda Swinton. Erica Linder was in Of Monsters of Men Empire. If you want to check her out. That's one of those, you gotta go look them up and you go like, oh, I see it. Because nobody's gonna know who those people are. Unless you're into the modeling community.
Yeah, and of course then you would, but
yeah, I see it.
We either cast, these are dream casts, so we can cast big, but I certainly, this is the kind of film...
Yeah, I didn't feel like it needed to be big.
No, and this is definitely the kind of film where you could build it out of an up-and-coming cast, actors who have one or two roles, and this is their first chance at a lead, and I think that it's a good opportunity for somebody to really shine. If they are an up-and-coming actor, it would be something interesting to see, much like Chronicle, where you have actors like Michael B. Jordan who are in that and have gone on to great big things.
Yes.
I think that that's the kind of movie that it should be.
Yeah. No, I think this is a career stepping stone type of movie, for sure. Yeah,
I reached for the stars with my Margaret and my Adrian, but everybody else was definitely that stepping stone actor, or need a bump to their career actor.
Yeah. Thought your casting for Margaret was pretty good because I had considered it myself.
Yeah, I'm too big for a movie like this, but
yeah,
we can dream.
But you know what? Sometimes like these bigger actresses and actors will kind of go do that art house movie because, they did that big tent pole like Underwater.
Yeah, and I mean, Kirsten Stewart is a classic example of that. I mean, have either of you seen Personal Shopper? It's a very...
Not yet. I've heard it's good.
It's good. It's really quite good. But it's definitely art house. It's definitely not a blockbuster film. Same with Spencer. That is art house all the fuck over it. Yeah. It's not what you expect.
Right.
Well, there was... I can't remember the whole title, but was it something of Sils Maria? Where she actually won... The Clouds of Sils Maria, where she actually won the French acting award for it. That's art house.
So yeah, she does what she feels like she should be doing, and so it is possible that she would go, "Hey, this is a really fun kind of thing to do."
No, it's a role that feels like it's actually kind of fit for her.
Yeah. And I think for her to do the gender flip as part of the role, I think she'd have a lot of fun with that too.
Yeah. Okay, well, this has been a weird one. Probably the most unique thing we've done, and that's saying something.
That is definitely saying something. I mean, as we've talked it out, I actually am happier that we watched it, as challenging as it was to get through. And I'm with Jay, I'm never watching it again. But I'm actually glad that I did watch it now, because I think the discussion we've had over it, and I start to see some of the nuance that makes it a cult film. Because it is very much a cult film, and it actually has some pretty high ratings in some spots.
Yeah, it does revere fairly well. IMDb gives it a 6.0 out of 10, which is...
very
better than I thought it would get. Yeah, the real tale of the tape here is very interesting on Rotten Tomatoes. What do you think the critics thought of this movie? We've already talked about a couple of critics from the era that gave it 2 thumbs down.
35.
That's what I was going to say as well. I'm going 35 as well.
So we got 2 saying 35. Well, critics' score on Rotten Tomatoes is 96%.
Are you fucking kidding me?
Yes, and it's not dyslexia saying 69, but it's actually I did a double take. 96%.
Wow.
Never. Okay, if I ever look up a movie and Rotten Tomatoes is like it's amazing, I'll be like, I'm never listening to it again.
I can't trust it. No. Clearly, I never did, but
Oh, now I'm going the exact opposite.
Yeah, Rotten Tomatoes is broken.
yeah. So maybe the audiences are a little more realistic on Rotten Tomatoes. What do you think the audiences thought?
Given that it's a cult film, I'm going to go mid to high 40s, 47.
Okay.
I'm going to go 62 because I'm thinking it might be IMDb level. And like you say, cult fans are much more favorable.
70%.
It was closer this time.
I think it's the art house people are reviewing it because most people probably wouldn't get past the first 5 minutes. I barely did.
Oh, I can assure you that if we were not doing this for the show, that long, drawn-out club scene with the bad music, I probably would have turned it off.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
I
before
wouldn't
we
have made it very
go,
far.
I have to mention, after the credits are over, there's a blank screen and the music just keeps coming at you.
I did not wait for the credits to be over. As soon as it went 2 credits, I'm like, thank God. Click.
No.
We were broken. We didn't know what to do.
We just were so, like, distraught that the thought of grabbing the remote just came into my mind. And we're just waiting, like, and the credits roll, and it's on black, and the music keeps going and going and going, trying to destroy you.
Yes.
You cannot blame me for that. You only have yourselves to blame for sitting through that. I'm not taking a rap on that part. The first part, yes, I will.
Stop.
And I laughed and I cried. What is happening? Why did we do this?
Because it makes for great pod.
It does make for great pod. And this pod is only great with our listeners' support. So follow us on our social media at Invasion Remake on Twitter, Invasion of the Remake on Facebook and Instagram, and Invasion of the Remake at gmail.com if you want to send us your suggestions, your corrections, and your comments. And of course, your fan challenges that have nothing to do with this movie on any way, shape, or form. Don't be that cruel to me. Please don't.
Been there, done that.
But maybe you will, and I got tricked into this before. I've been tricked into other things that were terrible. So maybe you can catch us. You know we like weird, and aliens doing drugs was definitely a good hook. Boy, did we not know.
Here's the thing. I could possibly forgive you if you warn us that don't do this alone. Do it with a buddy. Be in a safe place.
You need a support system in place for this one.
You need to MSTK 3000 it.
Yeah. Yeah. And do us a favor, write a short review on your favorite podcast platform, like Apple Podcasts and
Good Pods,
Podchaser. Those are fantastic places to do it. It helps get more
earballs
on the show. You can also visit our website,
invasionoftheremake.wixsite.com/podcast.
And over there, you'll find a handy-dandy little button. If you click that button, it'll take you to our TeePublic Store. And over at our TeePublic Store, there's lots of cool designs that you can wear and carry. And t-shirts, mugs, posters, totes, books,
stickers, pins, magnets.
Yeah, and so much more. So check it out. We've got 40, 50 designs right now.
Something like that,
yeah. It's quite a bit. So check it out, sign up, get notifications when a sale happens, or follow us on our social media. We'll certainly post when sales and the like happen, but you can get alerted by TeePublic yourself if you sign up, and you'll get notifications in your email.
Mm-hmm.
Ding!
Yeah, and you can follow us there too, so you might even get emails about when new designs hopping on our store.
Ding!
And it'll be about sales. I mean, honestly, who doesn't like sales?
Exactly. Yeah, pick yourself something up nice, and it helps support the show and keep us free in your earballs every single week. All right, well, it's time to come down. I feel the drugs are finally crashing. The drug that is Liquid Sky is finally flowing off of me, I hope. Next week, we will come back with a comparison. Until then, I've been Jason.
I'm always Sam.
And I continue to be Trish.
And we are out of here.
You know, my mom was great. Listen to this. One time she came out of the hospital, right? And she was okay. She was cool. She was great. So she went out with this guy, this really straight guy, and they went to this really fancy restaurant. You know, the best in town, right? She's doing fine. And all of a sudden, man, she gets up on the balcony. She gets right up on the balcony, man, and she pulls up her skirt and she looks at all the people and she says, "I'm Jesus Christ, man, I baptize you in the name of the Son, the Father, and the Holy Ghost." And she pissed on everybody. Must have gone in their fucking food and everything. Can you beat that? Shit.
Then what happened?
Then they threw her back in.